Stop. Okay, I'm back. Hi, Aquarium baby. Glad you made it back. I'm going to give a few minutes for other people to come back in. Hi, Marie. Sorry about that, everybody. I'm going to see while we're waiting if I can get a picture of the Mothman statue up here. I don't know if I can do it or not. Let's see. Edit avatar. There we go. Yes, I can. Okay. Okay, if you all look at your screen, the statue there is the statue that stands in the middle of Point Pleasant. I'm about to smack her, Marie, my kitty. I love her to death, but she's getting into everything right now. I think she's feeling a little jealous because she's being ignored. Anyway, that is the Mothman on the screen. Hey, Lufa, glad to see you back. That's funny, Marie. The message that you put, hello, pussycat, it was held as potentially inappropriate. That's funny. Anyway, I pulled up some of the things that I couldn't pull up while I was talking to you all because I had everything set up, that I wanted to talk about, but, you can't remember everything. So some of the stuff I pulled up to make sure, that I had some of my facts right. So while everybody's waiting, I don't think you guys were here in the beginning. So I'll go back over just a little bit of it. One of the reasons why Point Pleasant is so beleaguered by all this weirdness and creepiness, or what a lot of people believe, is because from the town's inception, well, first of all, it was built on a place of power. Two rivers meet at the very edge of Point Pleasant. The town actually culminates in a point. The historical park where the Battle of Point Pleasant took place is located at that point. And supposedly somebody, I don't know, some people say George Washington, some people say it was the general of the Battle of Point Pleasant, and I can't remember his name right now, sorry, but supposedly somebody important stood there and said, this is a very pleasant point, and that's where the town got its name. But the Indians believed that it was a place of power because of the mingling of the two rivers, the Ohio River and the Kanawha River. And the park itself is named Tewindewi, which is Shawnee, I believe, for mingling of the waters. Hold on, I'll check that. Tewindewi. There were, I believe, 7 different nations of Indians in Point Pleasant at the time. And there was a huge battle between the frontiersmen and the Indians. And it was named the Battle of Point Pleasant. And the chief was a great and fearsome fighter. And his name was Kituga, which translates to mean cornstalk. And so he was known as Chief Cornstalk. This was in the 1700s. He was kind of lured to his death with the promise of peace. And when he was assassinated, it was kind of like a violation of that peace treaty. This is a very abbreviated version of what happened. Anyway, Cornstalk told one of the captains that he didn't want to fight any longer, and he and his tribe were holding back from joining in with the British. I'm sorry, this was during the Revolutionary War. I forgot to mention that. Um, and the Americans wanted to use him to keep the other tribes from attacking. So what they did was they took him and held him captive to keep the other tribes from attacking. Um, and supposedly at the time, he and the other Indians were treated very well. But during the time that he was captive, a white man was killed by an Indian, I guess. And so Cornstalk was murdered. And as he died, he cursed the town. And the stories say that what he said was, I was the borderman's friend. Many times I've saved him and his people from harm. I never warred with you, but only to protect our wigwams and lands. I refuse to join your pale-faced enemies with the redcoats. This sounds so racist. I'm sure these aren't the right words, but this is what it says. I came to the fort as your friend and you murdered me. You've murdered by my side my young son. Um, his son had come to visit his dad, and so when he came, they assassinated his son as well. Um, anyway, he said, "For this may the curse of the Great Spirit rest upon this land. May it be blighted by nature. May it be blighted in its hopes, and may the strength of its peoples be paralyzed by the stain of our blood." So he supposedly spoke those words before he died, and Cornstalk's corpse was buried near Fort Randolph, where he was assassinated in Point Pleasant, overlooking the junction of the Kanawha and Ohio rivers. Um, Now, his grave was moved more than once. In 1840, I think, his bones were moved to the courthouse, and a monument was erected for that. In the 50s, I think he was moved again, and he was eventually buried in Towindowee, next to the grave of a frontiersman that he fought beside at one point, like he befriended. A 12-foot monument was then set up for Cornstalk, um, but some believe that there is unrest in his spirit, and that's related to what was done to him, as well as the movement of his body. Um, anyway, the Mothman happened in around 66 when the first sighting happened, and the Silver Bridge happened in 67. And let's see. I'm looking for some of the disasters here that were considered. Some of the ones here that happened in here didn't happen in Point Pleasant. But some of the weird things, Point Pleasant had an explosion in the middle of the night at the Mason County Jail. Um, and a woman whose name was Harriet Sisk was in jail there for the murder of her infant daughter. And her husband came to the jail with a suitcase full of explosives to kill himself and his wife and to destroy the building. They both died along with 3 law enforcement officers. Um, and this is all stuff that happened within a few years of this. A freight train derailed and thousands of gallons of toxic chemicals were dumped, and all the town's water supply and wells had to be abandoned. Um, let's see. The town of St. Mary's, which is just outside of Point Pleasant, was struck with tragedy when 51 men working on a power plant were killed all at once when their construction scaffolding collapsed. Um, And there are lots of strange occurrences that happen where people died. Although a lot of this is kind of natural because there's a lot of plants and people do river work in that area and things like that. It just seems like a lot for a small town and small area. Um, so a lot of people attribute all these disasters to cornstalk, and they feel like the Mothman was drawn to Point Pleasant because of the curse. Damn it, YouTube's locked up again. I'm not gonna restart. Don't worry. Hi, Seraphin. Um, anyway, one of the things that I had couldn't get to when everything was locked up was part of the Mothman saga, and this was a man named Indrid Cold, and he appeared to a guy who lived in Point Pleasant named Woody Derenberger, and this guy worked for a sewing machine company, and he actually lived outside of Point Pleasant in Mineral Wells. But his story is connected to the Mothman saga, and it happened around the same time. It happened in '66, and he was coming home from work, and he saw what he described as a flying metallic cigar-shaped craft. The ship traveled right by his truck and blocked the roadway ahead, and gradually he had to stop, of course, or hit it. He described the vehicle as resembling a kerosene lamp, like the chimney of a kerosene lamp, and he said that it was hovering about 12 inches off the road. And while he watched, a door opened and somebody came out, and then the craft rose 50 feet into the air right above the highway. The person or being that came out of the craft walked right up to Woody's truck window, and he said he looked like an ordinary man. He said he was about 6 feet tall and about 35 years old. But, and this is kind of where it goes along a little bit, because like the men in black that visited the people who saw the Mothman, he had an olive complexion, um, and kind of an Asian looking appearance. And they said he was wearing a glossy metallic dark blue coat. Now, today, something like that wouldn't be thought of as strange, but think about, this was in the '60s. Glossy metallic clothing wasn't exactly something that was common. Um, he said that the man spoke to him in his head, not with actual words. His mouth didn't move. He said the guy had a fixed smile on his face. And a lot of people refer to this guy as the grinning man. So if you've ever heard of the legend of the smiling man or the grinning man, that's kind of where that comes from. Um, he said that the man gave his name as Indrid Cold, and he told Woody, that he wasn't going to hurt him. And of course, Woody was terrified because this was an experience that was outside the realm of anything that he'd ever thought was possible. But he said that the guy seemed to be peaceable and friendly. He said he talked to him for about 10 minutes, and Indrid told him that his people ate, breathed, slept, and bled just as he did. And at the end, he went to his flying craft and said, "We will see you again." So Woody called the police, and there was a lot of kind of pandemonium that surrounded that. And it was going on during the Mothman stuff. So a lot of people feel that it's connected, especially since Indrid Cold looked a lot like the descriptions, not in the clothing, and of course not in the vehicle, but his appearance was otherwise similar to the men in black. And while the conversation with Woody and Indrid Cold was going on, um, another man who was passing by at the time said that he'd seen somebody wearing the same clothing and matching the physical description standing by the side of the road, and that he tried to flag him down, but he was afraid to stop. Um, Other people claimed to see lights and fluttering vehicles at the same time that this conversation was going on. They reported seeing lights and fluttering vehicles on that same section of road. And there were several witnesses that actually corroborated seeing Woody stopped on the highway and talking to this man and seeing the flying craft parked on the road at the time. Um, Also, other reports of strange lights in the sky and other beings came in around this time as well, at the same time, at the same place, on the same night. And for almost 3 weeks, there a number of witnesses came forward and gave stories that went along with it. Um, and John Keel, who wrote the Mothman Prophecies book, interviewed him for his book, and a science fiction writer, Gray Barker, who was also from West Virginia, talked to him as well. So if you read the Mothman Prophecies, you'll read his story as well. But that wasn't the only um, experience or encounter he had. Um, Woody said that Indrid Cold visited him many times during the month that followed, and that he even went on the spaceship to his planet. Now, I want to stop here and at this point and say that I kind of think that maybe some of this he might have embellished. Um, now, I try to keep an open mind, but I believe that maybe he got a little carried away with some of the attention he was getting and the fame he was getting, and might have embellished some of it. But there's enough truth to it, that I wouldn't disbelieve everything he said that followed. Anyway, he said that Indrid Cole would appear at his front door, and that his wife and children um, knew about him, and met them. They came forward actually and said that they met him. Um, his wife also confirmed that these beings were very human-like, um, but she said that they were not human, even though they ate, dressed like us, breathed like us, and pretty much appeared human. Um, and there was one time where Woody did disappear for 6 months, and when he came back, he said that he had been with Indrid Cold that time. And his family and friends believed it. He also said he received regular mental messages, and that they would come to him suddenly and without warning, and would leave him with piercing migraines afterwards. Um, Now, I mentioned earlier the phone calls that some people got, uh, and Woody especially got a lot of them. Sometimes he got threats, which you would expect, like for back in that day when you start speaking out about this kind of stuff, people get threatened by that. But he got like I said earlier, the mechanical beeps and hums and gibberish. Sometimes it was just silent. Um, and when his family changed their number to an unlisted number, he still kept getting the calls. Now, today, that's not such a big deal. It's pretty easy to get somebody's phone number, if you have any idea at all what you're doing. But back then, you got to remember there weren't um, computers and technology like we have today. So getting somebody's unlisted number was next to impossible, back then. Um, anyway, it got to the point where people were just coming to his house and standing vigil, hoping to catch a glimpse of a UFO and stuff. And of course, people claim to have actually seen stuff at that time as well. Like I said, all that I kind of take with a grain of salt. But reports of seeing crafts and seeing somebody talking to Woody at his car at the time that it happened, I actually believe that there was truth to that. Because we're talking about a time where people didn't really believe in that kind of stuff, and so people wouldn't be blindly just coming forward and saying that because the risk that they took, of being considered crazy or having their job affected, or they're standing in a small community, which if you live in a place like Point Pleasant, in a small town, if you lose your social standing, your life is shit. I can tell you, once you get marked as crazy or, get a bad reputation, it doesn't go away. So for people to come forward and say that, they saw it too, um, it wouldn't be like today, just trying to be famous or get attention or get clout. They're actually risking their livelihood. Um, now, one of the strange things that happened were two men hiding in the woods by Woody's property, um, saw some of the what I believe probably was Indrid, but they saw a black Volkswagen pull in, and they said a peculiar man dressed in all black with tan skin exited and got out of the Volkswagen and talked with Woody for a while and then turned around and left. They didn't see anything crazy, but that is a sighting that many people believe were the Men in Black. Supposedly, Woody had never heard of that before, but after that particular visit, he was terrified of the Men in Black. And it's worth noting that he did decide voluntarily to be evaluated psychologically, and it was determined that he did not have any kind of mental health issues. Um, he wasn't crazy. He wasn't schizophrenic. He wasn't having hallucinations. There was no evidence of a chemical imbalance or disruption. Um, but the doctor who saw him and evaluated him actually claimed to have been contacted by a man named Indrid Cold, who reached out to him telepathically after he evaluated Woody. So, there are a lot of people who kind of blow him off as a kook and a crazy man and all that, because he did come forward about his experience as a contactee, and it did negatively affect him. His family and his closest friends were also affected as well. He lost his job. He had to deal with people harassing him day and night, people who were longtime friends disassociating with him. Of course, people trespassing onto his property and breaking into his home, being publicly ridiculed, uh, all those things he had to deal with, as well as the eventual breakdown of his marriage. And because he was harassed to the point where he couldn't live his life normally, he had to move away from the area. Um, Later on, he actually told stories of how stuff would disappear from his house, when it was locked up, like stuff that he'd written about his experience, and like letters that he had sent being intercepted. So he feels that he was being watched. Now, whether or not he believes that it was the government or people connected to, or beings connected to Indrid Cold, doesn't really say for sure. But based on the story as it was told, I believe that if somebody was interfering, that it was probably the government or the Men in Black, um, who reportedly showed up at people's homes who had sightings at that time. Uh, once again, they were reported as having dark features, an Eastern European or Asian look, and strange eyes, often covered by dark sunglasses, and that their movements often appeared to not be normal. Like they didn't quite know how to make the right gestures or how to hold themselves. Um, and of course, they didn't seem to know how to work our technology, but some people claim that they carried sophisticated technology that the people who came into contact with them couldn't understand. Um, I mentioned the outdated clothing, but some people also who encountered them said that they would be dressed in like police or military uniforms, but there would always be something off. Like they'd have like pins in the wrong place, for instance, or the shoes wouldn't be the right kind, or something of that nature. Um, One of the names that were being thrown around as an encounter was also Richard French. And this was another person who had an olive complexion. He had dark hair and a pointed face. And this was the guy that had the clothing that was out of period, like from the 40s, but appeared to be brand new. Even his shoes were unscuffed. The bottoms of them didn't look like they'd been walked on, but they looked like they came from the 40s. And the lady whose home or the wife of the man whose home he appeared at, offered him some Jello. And when they handed it to him, he tried to drink it and, acted like he'd never seen it before. So these people were the men in black that showed up. So it's not common, um, like what most people think of as men in black. Like most people, when they think of men in black, they think of, like the movie. Government officials who show up, and they know their shit and they know what they're doing and they're just trying to shut people up. But the actual men in black that, or at least as they relate to this story, actually appear to be beings from either another world or another dimension, or maybe even not entirely human. Um, and no, if I've never heard of that case, but that sounds really interesting. Is this a recent thing? Like if you have any more information, type it out and I'll take a look at it here in a minute. Um, The Conjuring House. I knew that the movie The Conjuring Mignon was based on a true story, but I don't. I haven't heard a whole lot about that one. I don't think. And so for music, I'm not sure who saw the bottom of his shoes. I'm guessing he probably sat down and maybe crossed his legs or something. I'm not really sure. That was just something that was said by a few of the people who saw them. Um, Other things that were said about them is that they didn't know how to use a knife and fork, for instance. And I guess they met up with somebody at a waitress or at a restaurant or a diner, and the waitress had to come over and show one of them how to cut his steak. And they didn't seem to appear to chew their food, but to swallow it whole. Um, and most people believe that they're from the area. I'm sorry, most people from the area who saw them at the time said that they came across as unknown beings pretending to be human, but obviously not doing a very good job. Um, Another weird thing that happened was what was known as the phantom photographers. And that was what they did was take photos of people, like witnesses, for instance. But the camera that they used was blindingly bright. And so they would just pop up and take the picture. and it would blind the person, and they would get disoriented because they weren't expecting it. And then the person who took the picture would just kind of disappear while the person was still trying to recover. And that happened a lot to people who had these experiences as well. Um, one encounter that kind of relates to some of the stories that I was telling about is a guy came home one day from work to find somebody standing in his living room, and he said he was dressed all in black and he couldn't see his face. Um, he was reaching for the light, and the man just all of a sudden took his picture. There was a flash of light that was so bright that it completely blinded him. And while he was blind, the guy darted past him and went out the door. And nothing was missing from his home or anything. The guy didn't physically attack him in any way, just took his picture and ran away. Um, there were also reports of people dressed like men in black who would pull up in black Cadillacs and take out a big camera setup. Uh, and they would set up like a tripod, take a picture of the house, pack it all up real fast, and drive away. And there were also people who drove up to the house. There was a witness who had just had a baby, and they showed up at their house and claimed to be professional photographers who wanted to take pictures. And of course, the new parents would buy it because it was remember, a more trusting era. And the men would set up everything, take pictures, give the person a business card, and drive away, but they'd never come back to sell them the pictures. And when they tried to contact them, it turned out that the number didn't exist. Um, Another weird Men in Black thing were the phantom meter readers, which is somebody would show up dressed like a representative of a utility company, knock on the door, say they come to read the meter, and then they go into the basement or around the backyard or wherever the meter was located at, and then not come out. And eventually, when the person who owned the home went to check on them, nobody was there. And in at least one case, there was no other way out of the basement. Like there wasn't a window he could have crawled out of or a back door he could have gone out of. And there were census takers as well, fitting the same weird descriptions, um, and driving black limousines, though, instead of just a regular car. Um, so that was one of the things that that was going on at the time. And all these people who had these experiences were all witnesses who had sightings or or were investigating the sightings. Now, there were three men in black who um, visited another sighter, or I'm sorry, who visited John Keel. Um, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. John Keel was the main investigator, and he spoke to somebody who was visited from them. Sorry. Um, and the man claimed the man was a researcher, a professional, like UFO researcher, and he actually quit investigating UFOs after having his experience. He said that the experience was so frightening that he actually abandoned his research, and it was something that he'd done mostly all his life. Um, some people who had these experiences said that they represented themselves as government agents. Some people said that they believed that they were aliens. Some people believe that they're time travelers or people from another dimension or spiritual realm. But they were kind of a constant throughout all that. Um, And some of the folks who were visited, there was a reporter from the Register, which is Point Pleasant's newspaper, and they showed up and questioned her about the creatures and people that she had spoken to. Um, and one of the this is really funny. One of the people who were um, interviewed and had an experience with the Men in Black was the daycare lady from my first live. I don't know if anybody's here who remembers that, but the birthday cake story that I told, the lady who actually stole my birthday cake was one of the folks who had a Mothman encounter. And she was a well respected lady. You know, people trusted her to keep their kids, sorry. Um, but she had an experience with the Men in Black as well. The Scarberry family, which I went to school with their daughter, had an experience with them. And she said that they were, not only did they go to their home, um, and she said their skin was like really strange, and almost like see through. Like you could see the veins in their hands really clearly, and their fingers were longer than normal. Excuse me. And she said that because she was young at the time, she said that her dad reached out his hand to shake hands, and they acted like they had no idea what that was about. Like they didn't know how to shake hands or what shaking hands was for. Um, but the Men in Black actually followed the family around town. Um, like they follow them through the drive-throughs of restaurants and into stores and things. She said that like she could just look in the mirror of her car at any time and they'd be there. Um, and the other couple who was in the car at the time, the Mallets, were also visited by the Phantom photographers and the Men in Black as well. Uh, there are just so many stories. I mean, that's just a handful of them. Um, but one of the more interesting ones was John Keel actually would chase them around and try to confront them. Like when he was in Point Pleasant, he tried to have a confrontation with them. Um, and like people would have an experience, like they'd be visited and they'd call Keel and he'd race over there, but they'd always be gone. Um, so they were kind of afraid of him. But there was a lady who seemed to be kind of connected with the Men in Black, but she was different in that it was a blonde lady, and she had a Southern accent, um, and she claimed to be John Keel's secretary, and she would ask all these questions about the people who had the experiences, like about how much money they made and their health and their cars and like basic questions about their daily lives, but also detailed questions about their experience. Um, and he didn't even know about her until months after his research was done. But he never ever was able to actually have a real confrontation, but he did get approached by a phantom photographer who took a photo of him and then ran away. And so I thought that was kind of worth mentioning as well. Um, but I wanted to get those two things out because I thought that out of all the stories, I mean, a lot of places have, you know, local legends and local superstitions and things. Um, but um, most of them don't have as much corroborating evidence. And most of the time, when an outsider comes in, they talk to people who have things to say about it, but they don't get all this information and they don't have actual experiences and sightings themselves, which I think gives a lot of credence and believability to these stories. Um, Lufa, let's see. That's a good question. Hang on a second. I'll temporarily wrench and you can drop the link. Give me a second here. The case is from Alaska and shows a video from Apex TV, which is a paranormal channel. Interesting. Let's see. Oh, stupid YouTube. Okay, Lufa, you should be able to drop the link now. And then I'll just change it back after you do. That should work. Anyway, I've done a whole lot of talking while I've been up here, and I'm sorry, everybody. I haven't been looking at the chat too much. So I might have missed anything that you're saying, not because I was ignoring you all, but because I was looking at stuff that I had written down and the articles that I was getting the information from, because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't telling anything or saying anything wrong. But I did say that I wanted to hear what everybody had to say about their personal stories and stories that people they know may have had. And I definitely do want to hear and read what you all have to say. So I'm just going to take a look here in the chat. And if anybody wants to talk on panel, absolutely more than welcome to come up and talk to me. Because I would love to hear anybody's opinions on any of this stuff. The Real Conjuring House. I was interested in that. Let's see, when they were filming the movie, they had a lot of conversations with the family who lived there and found the house to be haunted. Super careful. It's so hard to depict fact. That's true. It is so hard to depict fact from conspiracy and fake from nonfiction, like the crazy people who are coming out. When they were moving in, a neighbor came over to welcome them and told them, for the sake of the children, leave the lights on at night. Not a good start. You know, the place that I live now has every year they do like a haunted house tour, and they've told us some stories from some of the things that have happened in some of them. And one of the places that we visited was actually empty. We got to go inside some of the houses and tour them. But one of the places that we had stood empty. And the reason they told us that it had actually stood empty and it had been empty for years and years was because people had tried to buy it and move in. And like the last family, for instance, that had lived there, moved all their furniture in and got everything set up. And like they woke up the next morning and found that the furniture they'd set up had all been like from the top floor, it all been like thrown down to the bottom of the stairs and things like that. So there is all kinds of weird stuff that happens everywhere. I think just my hometown just seems to have a huge concentration of it. Um, oh, Doodlebug, I'm sorry. That sounds. Oh, are you okay? Did you get hurt? I hope you're all right. Banged up, but nothing broken. Well, that's good. I'm glad you're all right. So I've told you guys about my dream sharing, and I told you all about the stuff that happened with the Ouija boards and um, the dreams and stuff. I want to hear what you guys have to say. Like, has anybody here had a sighting or anything? Does anybody want to come up and talk? I don't trust them either, soul for music. Not after, I don't know if you were here when I was talking about them, but Ouija boards don't like me. Not a single bit. Oh, well, you shouldn't be nervous, Mignon. You're more than welcome. I'd love to hear what you have to say. I'm not going to push you to if you're not comfortable with it, but there's definitely no reason to feel nervous or scared about it. Come on up, Seraphin. Do you have a story for me? I'd love to hear it. You missed the beginning? Okay. I'll give you a brief rehash of it. When I was in like 7th grade, there was a yes, I have aquarium baby. I've had it happen a couple times. And oh my God, like when I had it happen, there was a big dark shape, I thought, at the foot of my bed. And I couldn't move. All I could do was just lay there and be scared. It was really bad. But with the Ouija board stuff, there was a fad where people were bringing Ouija boards to school when they were a big deal, and they would never work around me. And they would always say that they hated me and stuff and call me a bitch and stuff. And that was the only thing they could get them to do. And well, actually, it happened more than once, but one particular time, I was trying to get the Ouija board to work with some friends, and it was doing that stuff where it said it hated me and everything. And all of a sudden, I noticed that all my friends were looking at me, just staring at me like I was nuts. And so I said, I was like, "What's your problem? Why are you looking at me like that?" And they were like, "Oh my God, you really don't know." Um, and finally, they told me that I had been basically unconscious for a while, and I'd had my hands on the planchette or whatever it is you call it. And while I was out, the thing talked to him and said a bunch of crazy stuff. I don't remember all of it, but it said a bunch of crazy stuff. One of the things that it said um, was that it hated me because I believed in God. And they said that when the thing quit working all of a sudden, and when it did, I just sat up and started talking to him like nothing happened. And I really thought they were fucking with me. I did. Like, I totally didn't believe it. And years later, I was with another friend of mine, and it was somebody that I didn't go to school with. And I never told that story. Like, I hadn't even thought of it in years. And they, we found an old Ouija board in our landlady's, like we babysat for our landlady. So we were hanging out in her living room, and we found her Ouija board. So we started playing with it, and the same fucking thing happened. And so, yeah, since that, I don't mess with them anymore either. Like, I don't know, it's, to me, that's freaking scary. And yeah. So I also had, when I was in 10th grade, I believe, um, a friend of mine and I decided to make our own. So we cut the letters and stuff out of notebook paper and put it in a picture frame, and we used a shot glass as a pointer. And the thing told us that it was a this guy we knew, and he was kind of like a bad boy, you know. And we were all it was like one of those guys in school that you're always kind of slightly scared of, but also everybody wants to be friends with. And we got to school the next morning, and when I got to my locker, I saw some of my friends standing around and they were all crying. And like, I just knew, I just fucking knew, you know. And they told me that that guy had died that night, the night that the Ouija board was telling us it was him. He had died in one of our friends' cars. He was huffing butane out of a Zippo lighter, and like his lungs like seized up or something, and he died. And yeah, Ouija boards are freaky, and I it amazes me that people actually that they actually sell those as a kid's toy, you know. But I do think there's something about the town that I'm from, because for those of you who weren't there when I said it before, I haven't had any weird experiences like that since I moved away. And I live over an hour away from that town now. And, you know, I had like things where I'd share dreams with people and just all kinds of weird shit. And nothing crazy like that has happened since I've moved. So I definitely think there's some kind of energy in Point Pleasant that was affecting me. Because I also had when I was living there, this like constant crippling fear of death. Like I was going to die any minute. When I was a kid, I didn't even want to go to sleep because I was afraid I was going to die in my sleep. I mean, what like 3 or 4 year old kid is afraid to go to bed because they're afraid they're going to die? You know, little kids don't think about that shit. But I thought about that kind of shit all the time when I was little. And I don't know. It's like, it's weird. It's like there's this oppressive cloud of doom hanging over that place. Um, oh, yeah, I definitely believe that, Doodlebug. I do. I don't blame. Oh, I'm sorry, Seraphin. I wasn't paying attention. Hey, how
That's
you
right.
doing? Sorry about that. I was reading the chat.
That's right. I had better days, Bo. Anyways, actually, I had a couple of encounters myself. Especially because me as a kid, we would be outside playing with my friends until like 3 a.m. So we caught the good stuff, and one of one of the ones I remember, and kind of to this day still terrifies me. Picture this: half a mile, houses on one side, the river on the other side. There's no lights whatsoever. On each corner, there was a bonfire. It wasn't as big. We always keep 5, 6 logs and set them on fire. And
Uh-huh.
when we saw that it was getting that the fire was going to go out, we would put a couple more branches to keep it on going. That was mainly our source of lightning when we would go back home.
Okay.
This specific day, it was around 2:30. We all got tired of playing soccer, so we decided to go home. I started to walk first. It was a peaceful night, moonlight, no wind. It was kind of warm. The fire on the corner, out of nowhere, got roughly 2 feet long and wide, about 4 feet wide. No one put anything. It was just logs on fire and no wind whatsoever either. On the actual fire, it turned into a smiley face, a terrifying smiley face. the eyes, because it kind of poke a hole through the fire, they started turning red, and we're talking bright red, like even brighter than the brake lights of a cars. And the smile, a terrifying smile, kind of like the ones we put on pumpkins. They look kind of friendly on a pumpkin, but picture that one on on the fire itself.
Okay.
I turn around to see because that much light, it created a big spot. So I turned around and that's when I saw the face on the fire. I turned pale white. I've never run in my life as fast as I did that day. From that corner, it was roughly about 2 minutes walking to get to my house. It took me merely 10 seconds to get to my house. When I went inside, because we always had the door open, I was sweaty, and my mother looked at me and she asked me, "What's wrong with you?" I tried to speak what I saw, but I couldn't. That's how terrified I was, to the point that I just started crying. So far, that's been one of the scariest encounters I've ever had.
Gosh, it sounds like it. And it was grinning at you, which is weird because that kind of goes along with like some of the sightings and not just like in Point Pleasant, I mean, I've heard that about other like people who have been visited by something that doesn't seem to be of this earth, and that grin kind of seems like it's a consistent thing that what am I trying to say? It seems like a consistency in the encounters that people have, like when they're visited by something that doesn't seem human. There's always a story about the creepy grin um, that they seem to have. So that's really
Yeah, and
freaky. Go ahead. Sorry.
no matter how brave you think you are, when you see that up close, it can turn you to complete terrified. There's been few cases where people got so scared that their hair actually turned white.
I've heard of that happening before. I've never like I don't know of any stories, but or anybody personally, but I've heard of that happening. People getting like their hair turning white or getting white streaks in their hair from stuff like that happening. Um,
Uh,
I'm lucky I never
I,
saw anything scary like that in real life. Like the only real kind of encounter that I ever had was actually seemed to be protective or nurturing in a way, but 'cause I don't know what I'd do. I'd probably die like a fright. I'm such a scaredy cat anyway. I don't survive.
no, I know one story because back in my town, there's I don't know if that cave still exists, but up in the mountains is there's a specific location with a cave. It's called the Devil's Cave.
Ooh.
Um, like some adults and even us kids, when we would go along with them, we would go hunting, and I my dad told me that story once that he was with some of his friends, and it kind of started raining, so they got into that cave to try to take over. They knew the name of the cave. They were mainly kind of scared, but they had no other option. Now that cave at night, from what I've been told by so many people in my town, at night it gets pitch black. Not a amount of light can be seen through.
Ooh.
Even a flashlight can only go so far before it disappears. And the, if there's wind, you will hear the howling as
Oh my god, I'd die. Oh my god. Caves are
and
freaky
if there's
anyway. Um, there's a cave. There's a set of caves near where I live called Carter's Caves, and there's a cave in there where, like you were talking about the pitch black, but like light can't escape or get in, and supposedly sound can't either. So if you go in there and sit in the quiet, I don't know if it's like a sensory deprivation thing, like you hallucinate just because of anything, or if it's like light and sound gets trapped in there and you're hearing something that, like light from somebody's light or whatever because it can't escape. Like, I'm not really sure what the explanation for it is, but we talked to some of the people who work there, and they said that they do. They all like will go sit in there as like an initiation when they start. And he was telling about some of the like how they'd hear like little kids singing and like floating balls of light and stuff in there if they'd sit in there for like 5 to 10 minutes and just be quiet. And ooh, I just think that's so freaky. I'd die. I really would. Ugh.
no, yeah, I've heard of those. Even I can explain it, but if there's no wind, however, you actually hear the howling of a wolf, and we're not talking like your standard movie. Howl! No, this howling is it will send chill down your spine within seconds.
Ugh.
But apparently, someone saw a figure with goat legs, tall, roughly about 7 feet tall. Um, they turned around. They saw the red eyes along with a smile, and then a hand pop up saying like, "Come over here." They all ran away outside, and one of the guys actually running, he tripped. So they were calling for him, and apparently the guy turned around and he started right on the face, within inches of his face.
Oh my
So
god.
they got that close.
Oh my god.
They all heard a scream and they started praying, and then that figure just vanished. The guy was able to get out, but his hair was white.
Oh wow.
And from that story, they say that that guy went insane. No one ever saw him after that. But the legend still says that even if it's thunder, do not go into the devil's cave.
Oh wow. Caves are freaky. I think that kind of goes towards that, like some geographic areas, have power in them. And caves are one of those things that I think have freaky connections to. Um, Doodlebugs will come on panel too. She has a story to tell. I
Ooh,
saw
I
her
want to
talking
hear it.
about it in the chat. Um, and she didn't say much. She just said she had the old hag on her, and in her area they called her the old hag. Now, this is a legend that I'm not familiar with. So uh, I'd like to hear your experience. Um, shoot, I'm trying
Go
to.
ahead, Doodle.
Okay, okay. How you doing, Doodlebug?
Doodle.
She must be having technical difficulties. Uh, you might have to refresh. Sometimes I have trouble with StreamYards. We're showing that your mic is on. You're not muted. Um, but sometimes I have to refresh or go in and come back up. Okay, well she's gone now. Maybe she'll come back up and we'll be able to get one.
Hopefully. Um,
Uh,
another rule of the many encounters. I was part of this little gang, and there was a cemetery kind of like in the center of the town, and it, that specific area was off limits for anyone, but we had our own territory. There was one occasion we actually went in there, but in the cemetery you will always hear children playing soccer, playing other sports, but
That's
no one had
Can you guys hear me?
so.
ever dared going there. Now
Yeah.
we can
Yes. Now we can.
take it away, Dodo.
Awesome. I'm so excited to hear this. I saw you talking about it in the chat, and if this is a legend that's popular, I've never heard it before. So I'm very curious to hear your story.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Can you
Yeah,
hear us?
Dodo.
Yes, I can hear you. Good evening.
Okay. Good evening. I saw you talking about your experience in the chat, and I've never heard of the old hag, so I'm really excited to hear your experience.
Well, now I'm in the South, and that's what my grandmother always called it. But the first
Uh
time it
huh.
happened, I was a young child staying at my grandparents' house, and um, I had this pressure on my chest, and it woke me up, and the room was dark, but I could see a just I don't know, it was like the room was different, and I couldn't move anything, and I closed my eyes really tight, and after it seemed like just time just stood still, but it was probably just a few minutes, and I could move, but I was completely paralyzed with fear. And I told my grandmother, and she said that that was the old hag and that I shouldn't be afraid. Well, it happened to me when I was in college. I was taking a nap on the couch, as we all do,
Yeah.
and I was laying on my stomach. And again, I felt the pressure, and I was paralyzed and I couldn't move. I could kind of flail my hands a little bit and my legs, but I couldn't really move them enough to, like, say, get somebody off of you. But I couldn't move. I could only move like inches. I couldn't move, like, any big movements. But it was terrifying. And I mean, I literally was awake, paralyzed. I couldn't scream. I couldn't do anything.
Oh my
It's just
God.
like a state of shock. But I haven't had it happen to me since, but it is terrifying.
So she said you shouldn't be afraid. Is there a story that goes with it, or like did she explain to you who she is or what she is?
She just says that she visits people and she sends warnings. But now my grandmother always like tried to stay in the positive. She never wanted to go anywhere in the negative when she talked about things. Um, but yeah, she said that usually it's just it's a warning sign that there's some bad energy, a bad mojo around you.
Uh,
Oh,
Actually, I've heard that story before. And
Yeah,
even once,
I think a lot of countries and a lot of places have their own version of this.
yeah.
yeah, I actually had a dream, or I think it was a dream with the same thing, because I was on the bed and then I felt the pressure. I
Hmm.
woke up and I tried to scream, but nothing came out of my voice.
Yeah,
And then
you
that,
just literally you can't. It's like that fear. I've been assaulted before, and I know what shock feels like, and you just don't have any energy to do anything. It's just all working to keep your brain functioning.
Right.
yeah, and, that's all I remember. So
I
I'm
had,
hoping it was a dream.
I had once when I was sleeping, just it just, but I saw it like I thought I saw a dark shape at the foot of my bed, and but that
Yes.
horrible feeling of terror, like, and not being able to move or breathe or anything, and like you did, I shut my eyes real tight, and then the next thing I knew, it was morning. Um,
Yes.
And I only had it happen that once, but it was like the amount of fear, like you can't even put it into words how freaking scary it is.
Oh, and it puts your mind into overdrive, and then you think you're silly and you don't want to talk about it because it's just weird, but it's
Right.
terrifying.
Yeah, it really is. And as the Glare said, they do call it sleep paralysis, but I don't know. I mean, I know it's
Your
fairly
mind plays
common.
tricks.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was saying I've heard it's called sleep paralysis, but honestly, who knows?
right. As- There are some terms that they use that I think are just buzzwords for things they can't explain. And I think for some people who have like medical conditions, sleep paralysis may be like, like people who like quit breathing and then they wake up and they can't move or something like that, like people who have sleep apnea and then they get paralysis as a result when they first wake up. I've heard of that stuff before, but like when I had it happen, I was like, I've been asthmatic, but I went through a period of about 10 years or so where my asthma didn't affect me at all. And when I had that happen, I was completely and totally healthy. And I still might have like just kind of blown it off as something physical if it hadn't been like for me seeing stuff. Like, you said your room was.
Yes, and see, the first time I did because I was on my back, but the second time I did it, and sometimes I've wondered, is that my brain with my grandmother telling me that it's okay? So the second time that paralysis happened, I was unable to see it.
Right, right. Did you
Because your
ever
brain
have?
does lots of things for you to cope with what's happening.
Yes, exactly. It does. And you said what I was thinking maybe you said she was like a warning that there was bad energy or bad spirits. Maybe the paralysis or the legend that she's on you, like holding you down or whatever, is trying to make you
Hmm.
be still so you don't draw attention to yourself, or maybe she's trying to hide you or something. It's I don't know.
My grandmother said that it's like they can take this, spirits can take your energy and give you fear, and it's a lot of, my I always call it the mind fuck system. I do that a lot to myself. I tell myself that, I'm not afraid, even when I am.
Yeah, I'm afraid of everything. I'm such a big chicken. Like, oh my gosh, I'm such a big chicken. Um, like I said, when I was a little kid, I mean, you don't hear many little kids who worry about things like getting shot or dying in their sleep or something. But, I was like 4 years old and worried about dying in my sleep. Just, I've always been a freak show when it comes to being scared. But I'm just glad I never had any experience like that when I was little. I probably never would have slept again. You did it too, you see, boss? Well, I'm glad to know I'm not the only one. See, it does do good to talk about this kind of stuff because that's how we find out we're not completely crazy, I think. uh,
That's
I really-
exactly right. That's why I said you don't mention it to a lot of people because it just sounds weird. My mom would just be like, "You're flaky," but then my grandmother would be totally about it, and so it's different. You just don't really talk about that stuff a lot unless you know someone pretty well, and
right,
no, they're not going to look at you like you're weird.
right.
Although they eventually do, anyways.
True that.
And
I've
then,
always
sorry,
had,
um,
right.
sorry,
Yeah.
I'm not crazy. My mother had me tested, all right? So I'm not crazy.
I figured that my mom, because she is so super religious, and a lot of people who are super religious like don't believe in any kind of otherworldly type experience, which is funny because if you are super religious, you'd think you would because like the Bible's full of that kind of stuff. But um, most super religious people, like when you tell them about something, will totally like think you're nuts. And when I told her about, I don't know if you were here when I was talking about having that experience in my bed, when I was having the good experience, the visitor in the middle of the night. But she totally believed me. Like I even mentioned it to her not too long ago, and I was like, I know you think I'm nuts, and she's like, no, I really believe that happened, and it
And you
really.
know, that's important to validate children and how they feel and what they feel they saw.
Oh, I wasn't a child. I was 20. I was old, but were you here when I talked about that?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. Um, just real brief. So many people missed. I should have waited a little longer until more people got in here to tell some of the stuff I told. Um, but when I was 20, my boyfriend had a really bad car accident, and they pretty much, like the doctors and stuff, pretty much told us he was going to die. And he had to have like emergency heart surgery, and he was in a coma for about 3 months, or not 3 months, sorry, about 3 weeks or a month, somewhere around in there. And while he was in that coma, like I had a big like existential crisis, like, um, is there anything after death? Why are we here? Is there really God? Like all that kind of stuff, that people go through. And at the time, I was super religious, so like I was doing a lot of praying and asking for signs and stuff. And in the middle of the night, I had a visitor. Like I dreamed that somebody was. I dreamed that I was sleeping, and like how like when you're a little kid, like your mom will rub your back while you're trying to go to sleep or something. Like I dreamed that somebody was sitting on my bed and doing that to me. And when I woke up, there was actually someone or something there and sitting on the edge of my bed. And I didn't freak out. It didn't scare me or anything. I just kind of reached for them. And when I did, they just kind of faded out into nothing. And I don't know. I just kind of like it made me feel better. Like I felt like I was at peace after it happened. And
It was
uh,
reassurance.
yeah, it was. It was. I kind of feel like that was like my sign or whatever, in a way that I was going through all that and I
They're
needed.
okay. You're gonna be okay, and you can live. You can put your feet forward.
Exactly. That and that there's more to life than what we see, on the surface, kind of.
Waiting for
Um,
you on the other side.
exactly. And I don't know, like I was asking for signs, and I feel like I was kind of given one in a way. And I mean, I don't think like I said, I'm kind of a patchwork spiritualist, so I don't necessarily think it was like an angel or something, but it had a very protective feel to it, like a parent almost. And
I told my son I'm a Aries, and then in the Chinese zodiac I'm a rooster. So I said, "There's any chance of coming back? Believe me, I will send you a sign."
there you go. There you go. I don't think the experience I had, I don't think it was like a ghost per se. I don't think it was anybody I knew.
Oh
But
yeah, no, I think they represent themselves in different ways.
mhm. It didn't look like anybody I knew, and their face didn't look like it was almost featureless. It was very, very unusual looking, a very smooth looking face. Um,
Sometimes I think maybe our ancestors can be all into one being that's there.
that's an interesting thought. Yeah, I have a
All their
lot of
energies
interesting
together.
theories about what it might have been. I've never come up with anything that I 100% for sure say, but it does to me like I don't know. It was a cool thing to happen, and I'm glad it did. But um, anyway, it's like kind of weird to me that I actually because I've only told a handful of people I know about it, so it's kind of funny that I actually talked about it on here tonight. But I think it kind of goes along with it because it happened when I was living in Point Pleasant, and
Oh yeah, that's a lot of stuff go on there.
yeah, yeah. Like out of all that dark stuff that happened, it was like I had this one little good thing that happened too. So I just I
Hey,
don't know.
the spirits are strong in certain places, and that's good and bad energy.
Yeah, I think there's something about the rivers there meeting or something maybe that like kind of attracts stuff because
Right.
they had the Mothman and then they had the UFO stuff and then they had that influx of Satanism that happened in the 80s and I don't know. It's just a really crazy for a town that has just a handful of people in it. Like a lot of really crazy shit goes on there. But I guess like there's something to all those movies and stuff, where people go into the creepy small town and all the shit happens because
Well, there's a book that I read. It was called Points of Energy. And it talked about how if you look at some of these places that were built, like in ancient times, there are different energy fields around these places. And that, before we had shoes and concrete, that we were able to feel the energy and where to build places. There's lots of theories about that, about energy and where it lives, and before we were clouded by a lot of things, what we could really interpret through Mother Nature.
right. There are places that I've been before where you just feel different being like it's hard to explain, but that's one of the things like Seraphin was talking about caves, and that's another place that I think like there's always some kind of weird energy when
The ocean. I'm a diver. There's a lot of different energy in the water. I mean, you can feel dark energies and positive energies in the water as well.
mhm. I've always felt kind of spiritually connected to the ocean. It's crazy as I love like I haven't been there in probably 20 years, but I love the ocean and I dream about it constantly. Constantly.
Yes, I love the water.
Me too. And it's weird because I have asthma, and like one of the worst recurring nightmares I've ever had has always been about drowning. And I think it's because I have asthma, so like you have trouble breathing. So, like, the idea of suffocating or something is particularly frightening to me. Um, but I used to dream about, well, I still do actually dream about drowning is a recurring nightmare. So it's funny that, like, if I could be anywhere in the world, it'd be the ocean. And like, I love it. Absolutely love
My,
it.
my death dream is always going off a cliff in a car, and that's probably my little, I guess, rebellious side is speeding. But yeah, my subconscious tells me I'm going off a cliff in a car.
Thelma and Louise.
Yep.
Did you ever see that movie, Thelma and Louise?
Oh, that's a great movie.
Oh, and it always pissed me off
Well,
that it
I'll
ended
let's
that way.
see if somebody else wants to come up here and share. But yeah, that was my old hag, and I believe a lot of countries have a name for the same thing. Of course, now we have a lot of scientific terminology,
Right.
but I think they all have that where you wake up just in a terror. And it's not like you like wake up and you're like, "What happened?" I mean, you're awake while it's happening, and that's
Yeah.
the creepy part. But anyway, thanks for having me up, and I'll see everybody in chat.
All right. Thanks for coming up and sharing. And
Thank you, Breakfast Club.
you're welcome. Anytime you want to come up, you're more than welcome. Um, Lufa said she feels connected to trees. That's interesting. I always
Yeah,
feel like whenever I'm out in nature, I always feel kind of connected to it. I think. But
for me, it's always been the fire.
fire.
I yeah, I always feel extremely connected with the fire.
That's cool. I've never. I don't know. I don't think I've ever particularly felt connected to any element per se, but I've heard that a lot of beliefs where they feel like everybody has an element that they're connected to. Wicca is one I think, like where they really believe that every person has like an element that's connected to them. And I never kind of thought of it that way until we started talking about it just now. But that's kind of neat. You might actually have some kind of spiritual connection. Did you ever have anything happen to you involving fire?
Well, I always play with fire. And yeah, I hardly ever got burned.
That's neat.
But I also had a experience with wind. But that one, I kind of blame it on the experience I had with an elemental ghost.
Oh,
Which, when I had that experience, it freaking terrified me. But after I had that experience, the wind felt kind of like natural to me.
Hmm. Well,
And
that
then
I guess, especially after that experience, and oh gosh, that gives me the chills. I'm glad I never. Well, I did when I was a kid, although it could have been a dream, but I don't know. At the time, it didn't seem like it. I thought I saw a man made out of fire walk past my bedroom door when I was a kid. So, but
ooh,
I don't know. That could have been maybe possibly been a dream, but it was freaky. The black-eyed
no,
kid.
for me, go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, I was looking at chat. Sorry.
Uh, for me, it was real because it was during the day. We
Mhm.
went to visit one of my sisters, like an hour away from my house. So, granted, it was a little bit windy, and I was what 9, 10 years old, and it was really windy, but not enough wind for to lift someone up, unless you were holding into like a parachute or something. So I was outside playing because I got really bored. So I was just throwing rocks around, and then out of nowhere, a really strong wind came and lifted me up roughly 3 feet off the ground. I
Oh my gosh.
I got scared. I got scared, but I didn't feel like screaming because I didn't think anything of it. I just got scared because I was up high, and I was up there for maybe 5, 6 seconds. Then I dropped down back down, and
Oh my
I was confused, and so I got up and I went inside too because my parents were calling for me already. And sure enough, after that, I've always loved the wind too.
wow. That's really cool. That's absolutely cool. I am. I've never. I've never. That's unique. I've never heard of anybody having an experience quite like that before. So you definitely must have some kind of connection with the elements for something like that to happen. Um, I've heard people say that like an angel picked him up and carried him or something like when they were hurt, and that was how they got to safety or whatever. But I've never heard of anything quite like that happening, like what you just described. Do you think that, like, did you feel like a presence when it happened, or do you think that it was like an elemental thing, like something from the earth?
No,
Like,
I felt well. I felt elemental because also too, there was 3 occasions where I was riding on a bicycle and I almost fell and hit my head on the river, but the wind just blew me the other way.
oh,
Another occasion, I was carrying one of those. I don't know the name of it in English, but we call them laminates. Think of a big long sheet of light metal.
okay.
So I was carrying it, and I almost tripped on the same spot of the river, and wind came out and lifted me up, um, like about 2 feet away from it.
And it just came out of nowhere,
I never,
like there wasn't wind blowing already, with like really hard, or like a windstorm or anything. Like it just kind of, like a gust of wind came out and pushed you to safety.
yeah, there was no wind, so it felt like this wind came out of nowhere and just lifted me away.
Wow, that's
So
crazy.
I don't know if it is an angel, but I do believe it was an elemental because I didn't feel anything, just felt the wind pushing me.
Right. Well, I've heard stories of elemental, like spirits that are basically elemental, like that's just it, and um, so that very well could have been um, just like a complete elemental thing, like something that came out of the, that's so cool. That's so cool. Copper says she's seen a few ghosts and experienced some weird things. I know she's not a panelist per se, but I think she should come up and tell us about it. What
Oh
do you
yeah.
think?
Copper should come on panel,
Let me hear her
especially
voice. She said, blah, blah. Oh, don't you want to tell your story, Copper?
you know you have a sexy voice too.
Mm-hmm. She does. Come on, Copper. You can do it. You can do it. I have faith in you.
Oh, Copper, come out and play.
Come out, wherever you are. Being there says black-eyed kids are supposed to be related to Men in Black encounters. I have never heard of the black-eyed kids before. That is something that's new to me, and I'm going to have to look that up. That sounds really scary, but really interesting. I know I hear.
I won't. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I know I've heard stories about spirits with black eyes and demons with black eyes, but never about the children.
Well, I've heard before about a kid with black eyes, and I actually looked it up a couple days ago. There are some people that have black eyes, but they're not pure black, but they have that shade of extremely dark brown
Mm-hmm.
that it kind of does look like black,
Mm,
and those are the kids with the rarest color eye.
okay, I
Uh,
gotcha.
but other than that, some of the stories I've heard that they're possessed, I call I call bogus on that.
Well, I just looked them up here, and apparently they're a contemporary legend of supposed paranormal creatures and, oops, hang on, that resemble children with pale skin and black eyes and are reportedly seen hitchhiking or encountered on doorsteps of residential homes. Ooh, I wonder what they do though. Let's see. There's a horror film about them called Black Eyed Kids. Okay, that makes sense. Let's see. It doesn't say what they supposedly do, though. It just says that they've been sighted. Hmm. Uh, okay, Snopes says that the story says they show up at the homes of unsuspecting residents. Um, and ask in a breathless and monotone voice to use the bathroom or make a phone call or something like that. And that they variously claim to be vampires, aliens, interdimensional beings, or some form of demons. The adult feels a sense of overwhelming fear before realizing that there's something drastically wrong with the children's eyes. But it doesn't, this one doesn't say what they supposedly do to you either, I don't think. No. None of the things say what they supposedly do. They just say they're really creepy and they like approach people and ask for help and pose as children. So no whites
Yeah,
and no woman.
that's why I always believe those are just pure bogus.
Mm-hmm. Probably so. I have heard that Doodlebug though about Doodlebug says that serial killers, some of their survivors say that the killer's eyes turned dark like that when the switch was flipped. Supposedly people who have been possessed, their eyes get like that. If you watch like in a lot of the movies, like their eyes do that, but on Supernatural and stuff, like their eyes turn all black. So maybe some of the serial killers were possessed by demons. You never know. Um, I know that's the big explanation for people who do things like that with no explanation or reason. Um, Copper says she always thought they were Renfield, slaves to the vampire. Yeah, and that's the truth. Ugh. I think to me,
Uh,
the idea of being Renfield is scarier than actually being like a vampire victim. The story of Renfield, like that's scary. Losing your mind like that. I'd much rather be a victim of a vampire than be a Renfield. Anyway.
for me, I fear the living more than I fear the dead.
Hmm.
Because the living, they can do some serious damage.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, the worst you ever hear about spirits doing is maybe throwing a few things around, but for the most part in real life, most spiritual presences are harmless. There you go, Lufa. Yes, if it was Keanu Reeves, I would be his victim anytime. Amen. Unfortunately, they usually look like old Gary Oldman instead of Keanu Reeves. Ugh. I hate Halloween scary houses too. I've never been to one of those UC balls, although I've always kind of wanted to, but I get scared so easily. I've never done good with haunted, not like Halloween type haunted houses ever. I always get so scared and end up shutting my eyes the whole time. Yeah.
No, for me, is the scare jump the usually the ones that get me.
Oh yeah.
Even when I go watch scary movies, I kind of predict the demon or whatever is gonna come out,
Mm-hmm.
and when they jump, that's when even I get jumpy. I go like, "Holy crap!" Even though I knew what's gonna happen.
Right. I agree with you there. To me, that's the worst. Well, now it is. When I was a kid, it wasn't. But to me now, like the worst part is the jump scares. I have a friend, and she can't help herself. Every time we watch a movie and there's a jump scare, she'll jump in her seat and flail her arms out. And it never ever fails. Like if I go to a scary movie with her now, I've always got my arm up because it never fails. She elbows me in the boob every single time a jump scare happens. And that's the scariest part of seeing scary movies with her is because I know I'm going to get elbowed in the boob at least once during the movie. So,
Yeah, that's funny.
yeah, I've learned if I watch a movie with her now, I just have my arm up over my boob the whole entire time. Uh, oh,
No, it's funny for me. I love to scare people, and I can do a couple of noises that can probably scare you, more scare the average human.
no, really?
Uh,
Let's hear it.
yeah. Ay, mis hijos, ¿dónde están mis hijos? That's a whipping woman.
That is pretty
Uh,
creepy, I have to say. If I heard that outside my window at night, I'd probably pee. Who is Chris Motionless? I've never heard of Chris Motionless. Is that a
Neither have.
real person or is that a typo, Copper?
What about this one?
Okay.
Uh,
No. That actually sounds like a voice or
the
a
Grudge.
voice I used to hear in a bad dream that I had a lot when I was a kid. Oh my god, I'd die.
No, that one is from the movie The Grudge.
Oh yeah, yeah, I remember that actually.
Uh,
Um,
And this one you will recognize. One, two, Freddy's coming for
oh no, I
you.
can't handle that. Mm-mm. When I was a kid, oh my god, I was haunted by that when that movie came out. And my brother would sing that to me to freak me out because that movie scared the mortal piss right out of me. Oh my god, that movie scared me so freaking bad. Oh my gosh. Oh, I've got the heat
Well,
back, you know?
For me, I've been watching scary movies since I was 6. But in my childhood, the only movie that actually scared the living hell out of me was the movie It.
Oh yeah, I read that when I was fairly young, and it is the only book that ever gave me nightmares. I've had movies that gave me nightmares lots of times, but I've only had one book ever give me nightmares, and it was It. That ugh. And the new one is, in my opinion, is not nearly as terrifying as the original was. Ugh.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
I
Yeah,
just
the
want to
original is
mention,
way better.
yeah, yeah, 100% agree. I just want to mention here that Doodlebug dropped a link for Gannon's Law to change. Let's see, hold on a second. Let me pull it up here. Um, to ensure children under the age of 13 are classified as missing and or endangered. So if y'all get a second, click on that link and go over there and sign that petition. Um, and Doodlebug's dropped it up there. It's right up there. So make sure to do that. Uh, Being there said she went to The Shining when she was 10. You know, that book, once again, the book was so good. But when I saw the movie, I was actually super disappointed by The Shining. The book was so
No,
like it had me on the edge of my seat. Did you see The Shining?
uh, I've seen the movie, but I've never read the book.
Oh, the book was so good, I thought, and the movie did nothing for me at all. But I'm a big Stephen King fan. Yes, Amanda, I love that book. Love that book so much. I heard Stephen King didn't like The Shining either, so I'm not alone. But you see, boss. I don't know if they did quit looking for him. I think they're still looking for Gannon, aren't they? Does anybody know?
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know any.
I I know. I came late in Will's live. Um, is he still here in the chat? Is Blair still here?
Doodlebug, sorry, Doodlebug says yes, he's still missing.
Okay. Yeah, Amanda says the searches are still ongoing. I thought so, but I haven't heard any updates or anything recently, so I wasn't exactly sure. I like Alfred Hitchcock's scary movies that shows no blood. Um, Alfred Hitchcock movies are just freaking genius. I remember my mom talking about when, um, oh shoot, Norman Bates, what's that? Oh, Psycho first came out, and how everybody was so horrified over the fact that it showed the blood swirling down the drain. That was considered so gory and graphic for their time. That's so funny to think of now. I can't handle things like where they show people being hurt and torture porn, and I can't handle it. No updates in weeks.
Uh,
They're searching in very specific areas, and crime units have been to the house multiple times. Does anybody who knows anything about the Gannon Stotch case and like wants to talk about it and just give a little bit of an update? Feel free to come up and talk about it because I don't really know a whole lot about it, and I'm interested for any updates. 'Cause I came late in Will's live, that's why I was asking because I think he knows a little bit about it. But if anybody knows about it and wants to talk about it, feel free to come up. Um, Doodlebug's talking about the birds. The lady who was in the birds had her story is so interesting. I can't remember her name now, but um,
uh,
she was
um,
afraid of birds anyway, and they told her that they were going to be fake birds in the movie, and then they used real birds to get like a real reaction out of her, and she had PTSD and Tippi Hedren, thank you. She had PTSD and she had like really got like her face all marked up and stuff, and In addition to Alfred Hitchcock sexually harassing her to like a horrible degree, um, she also got like physically and mentally messed up making that movie. Um, the way he treated her was terrible. There's so much. The case is so confusing and
um,
so much, and most is speculation. Um,
um, sorry, sorry, breakfast. I'm really hungry right now.
okay.
I'm gonna get off and cook something real quick.
Okay, Seraphin, thanks for coming up. You know, you're welcome up here anytime.
Uh,
Just feel free to click on the link. Thanks for
Thank
sharing.
you. Uh,
Stop.
Thanks. I'll be back ASAP.
Okay, sweetie. Yes, your own imagination is more scary than any movie can show us. The Blair Witch Project, I'm still salty about that because when it first came out was when uh, computers first started getting real big and you started being able to download and watch stuff for free. So when I first saw the Blair Witch Project, I saw it as a download on a computer. I didn't know it was a movie. I thought it was real footage. And I was so pissed off when I started seeing the ads for the movie and I realized it was just a freaking movie because I was completely and totally fooled by the footage. But another thing about that movie is that a lot of the actors didn't really know everything that was going to happen. Like they would plant notes and stuff. So like when the one guy supposedly kicked the map into the creek and lost the map, the other actors didn't know that was part of the script. They thought he really threw their map out. So when she freaks out on him and starts hitting him and shit, like all that was real. That was like a real reaction. And like when they came and shook the tent in the middle of the night and stuff, like they didn't know that they were going to do that. So they only knew certain parts of what was supposed to happen, and only certain actors knew, like only the actor who was doing it knew that they were going to do it. So I think that's another thing that makes it scary because a lot of times their fear or their reactions are actually real as well. Serpent in the Rainbow is scary, and the drug they use in that movie I know is real. PWP did scare me. The Blair Witch Project, yeah, it scared me a lot, but I'm still salty about it not being real. So salty about that. Um, I'm running out of stuff to talk about, folks. Y'all need to give me something, or I'm gonna have to give up, or somebody's gonna have to come up and panel with me. Does anybody have any questions? Anything they want to share? It doesn't have to be about paranormal experiences. We can talk about anything. Or questions about anything I talked about tonight, even. Oh, thank you, Lufa. I think I've run out of steam now. By the way, if anybody hears any crackling noises or fart noises, I have where I broke my arm. Um, I'm still like I broke my arm a year ago, and I fell roller skating. And when I did, I broke it bad enough that I knocked my wrists like knocked my hand off my wrist bones, and so I'm still having troubles with it a little bit. So I invested in a few containers of artisanal slime because I like the noise it makes, and it's good for my hand. Like I can squish it without having to put in too much. Like it helps me work my muscles. Anyway, it's kind of noisy sometimes, so I swear I'm not farting into the microphone. I've got slime and I'm playing with it with my hands. Um, BEKs. What is BEKs being there? I'm not sure, but we can talk about it now. I'm down. Spiral fracture, fell off a horse. Oh my God. I had a green stick fracture on my left arm once, and it was terrible. The pain was awful. For this one, though, the pain was so bad that I actually started like shivering all over, and my blood pressure went up to where they actually it got into stroke territory. And when I went into the ER with my broken arm, they gave me 2 shots of oh shit, what is that stuff called? Fentanyl. Uh, and that's the stuff that like it's sincere. Oh, black eyed kids. Okay. Yeah, yeah, being there, I'd be interested to hear more about that. And you can come up and talk about it. Like, I leave my panel open for anybody who wants to come up. Absolutely more than welcome. I'd love to hear what you find out. Um, anyway, they gave me something to knock me out to set it because they said that the pain was going to be terrible, and I was already like going into, I guess, shock or whatever. But they gave me 2 shots of fentanyl. It did nothing. And then they gave me that stuff like they give you before you go into surgery. They gave me a general anesthetic to knock me out. And I actually woke up when they set my arm and started screaming. Thought I was going to die. But the worst thing about it was, though, was I went, like, I didn't know the girl that I went roller skating with all that well. She was like a friend of a friend. So I was trying to make a new friend. And that girl made me sit with an arm that looked like the letter Z for 2 hours until the skating rink closed because she refused to leave. And then when the hospital was about 5 minutes away from where the skating rink was, it was 26 or 27 blocks away from where we were. Not very far, about a 5-minute drive. And I asked her to drop me off at the hospital, not even to take me, to go in with me or anything. I was just like, please drop me off. And, the bitch had to go to her house first because she said she was hungry. I waited out in her living room for about a half an hour, went looking for her, and she was back on her bed getting high. And finally, I had to call my boyfriend to come and get me and take me to the ER. I hurt myself at 7:30 p.m. and I didn't get to the hospital until like after 11. I couldn't even imagine doing somebody who was hurt like that. Like, oh my God, I'm still salty about that. Anyway, Amber Alert, I don't know. I thought she was going to go on and come up, but a lot of people that I thought were going to be here tonight aren't. So I'm kind of sad that more people didn't show up, but maybe it's because I started earlier than they expected me to. My favorite scary movie. Oh gosh. I like. It's really hard to say. I guess the movies that I like are all for different reasons, so it's hard for me to pick a favorite on the scary movies. The movie The Cell, even though I cannot stand Jennifer Lopez, but the movie The Cell was so cool and had so many cool like visual effects and stuff. So for visual effects and stuff, I would say probably The Cell. Also, it was great acting by Vince D'Onofrio as well. But I don't know, like, if it's my favorite as far as scary movies go, because then you've got to choose between The Nightmare on Elm Street and the original. The other ones were pretty stupid, but the original. Um, and Halloween. And I mean, there were so many good, like the 80s, in my opinion, was the best scary movies because they were so realistic now. Like they're all so CGI and stuff. And they just didn't look nearly as real as the ones that are out now do. Um, although I was really, really into the most recent season of American Horror Story because they did that whole 80s tribute, and I thought they did so good with that. Yeah, she's not my friend anymore, don't worry. She never really was a friend to begin with, but I couldn't even imagine treating a stranger that way. Sure, being there. we can do that. I'll try to remember. Just if you see me, just kind of like, or stick a fire under me and remind me if you don't mind. My email's on my um, channel also. And it's answer the question Claire at hotmail.com. So if you can like email me or holler at me when you see me in chat. And yeah, I'm definitely down for that. Doodle 80s movies were the best all around. I mean, of course, everybody knows how I feel about The Breakfast Club, but um, there are lots of great movies. And UC Boss Coal Miner's Daughter was a great movie. A lot of it because it was, true, of course. But I mean, that was an Oscar-winning movie, so you're not crazy at all for thinking it was for loving that movie. Um, I think The Abyss could happen. I didn't consider that a scary movie, though. The Abyss was that was a cool movie. UC Boss, I see a channel wanting Dee Dee Dugan. What do you mean, UC Boss? What's going on? Is that where everybody's at? To come up? I don't think so, Copper. I think all you have to do is just click the link. Because I've heard, like, I don't use it on my phone, but I've heard other people say that all you have to do is just hit the link. Now to stream on your own channel, I'm not sure, it might be different, but your father started out as a coal miner. Oh, my mom's dad was a coal miner, and we had a lot of them in our family. And my mom, don't answer the door if you're not expecting anybody. Well, the place I live in now, I wouldn't do that anyway, but I gotcha. Is it who I think it is, you see? Yeah, that's what I figured. Is that where everybody's at tonight? I don't know. We talked about everything. We can talk about drama a little bit if we want. I don't care. Oh, I see a scheduled live that's about exposing repugnant, doxing assholes. I'll tell you what. I don't know what that's referring to, but if there's anything aimed about me in there, then peace ain't going to last too much longer. I've already said I'm not going to defend myself anymore against bullshit because I don't want to give it any more attention. The people who know me know the truth, but I'm starting to get sick of it. Yeah, Dee Dee Dugan. I'm not going to watch it, but it says it's saying that you're Foxy Bot. So that's crazy. Last week they were saying that you were me. Oh yeah, apparently that's where everybody's at tonight. Well, all they're doing is, and I'm not going to say their names because it's bullshit. They're getting attention through negative shit and it's working. And that really annoys me because these are all the people who aren't loyal. They don't care about the people who are, oh, Copper, I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about a scheduled live that I saw for later tonight that refers to some stuff. So I'm just saying if that has anything to do with me, the peace ain't going to last. Anyway, people who give that shit attention are just as bad as they are. That's how I'm starting to feel now. And that's all they do. Like, they bring up this shit and they annoy people because they're just after views and stuff. And so they're using people and other creators to get attention. And it's actually annoying because they're not doing anything positive or putting anything useful out there. And it's kind of sad that people are following this shit. Like, I just wish that, like, people talk about how they hate all this negativity and stuff, and then they just kind of like flock to it. I don't know. Ain't that the truth? Yeah, being there, I've seen some of that too, and you know, I am. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did, and I really admire him for doing that doodlebug, because that's another one that's continuing drama for views. And you know what? Like, I may only have 15 people in here right now, and that's okay. I mean, I'm kind of bummed that there was somebody who was going to read cards that was going to be here, and some other people, and I'm kind of bummed they didn't make it. But you know what? For the people we've had in here have been great. I've enjoyed talking and telling my story, and I've enjoyed hearing and reading everybody else's story. And I don't care if there's 3 people in my fucking chat, as long as they're quality people and they have quality stuff to add. Um, and that's how I feel about it. I'm not trying to make a career out of YouTube. And I'm not trying to feed babies with YouTube money. My kitty cats will eat whether I go on YouTube or not. And I think the best thing is just to not engage. Yes, Doodlebug, exactly. Loyalty, not drama. So, and that is like, I don't mind talking about drama from time to time, but I so don't want this to be a drama channel. I want people to come here and walk away from it feeling good. Like, I don't want people to walk away from time spent on this channel feeling upset. And I've realized that a lot of these channels, like, if I go on there and I watch the content, I walk away feeling upset. And why in the hell do I want to spend my precious time on creators who make me feel bad? Like, either make me feel angry or, whatever. And even if I like them, if they're still just like, if I like the creator themselves, if all I hear is negative shit, like, just what's the point? People should be entitled to 3 chances to get their opinions across nicely. Otherwise, you're disruptive. You know, I don't care if somebody has a different opinion than I do. You can voice it. I'll talk to you about it. We'll sit there and discuss it. I can have an intelligent debate with somebody. But when somebody feels like they have the right to yell at me because I have a different opinion about something than they do, that's where I start to get pissed off and draw the line. And especially people who think that they're entitled to insult my intelligence because my opinion is different from theirs. I've had people, and YouTube is so bad for that. Oh my God. I'm the moral authority of YouTube, and I have the right to tell you that you're stupid and you don't have anything to say and you don't make sense, blah, blah, just because my opinion is different than yours is. I find that really, truly annoying. And if you've noticed that most of these people, once they run out of things to say and they know that they've lost the argument, they just resort to calling you stupid. And I can't even with people who do that shit. It's just like, why even bother? If all you're going to do is just bitch fight then why are you even bothering creating content? That's not content. And if all your content is talking about other people, well, that's not content either. You're just exploiting somebody else's name to get it into your channel. And hashtagging the name of a more popular creator to fool their subs into thinking that they're on your channel, to me, is desperate and grasping behavior. And I will never, ever, I can promise you, never hashtag anybody's name to get people to come into my channel. Either they want to come and watch me or they don't. And I might have somebody good on as a guest, and that's great, when it happens. And I still want to do the fashion police thing, and I just want to get a little more into my groove. And because after I was shut down by So Loony for those 3 weeks, I feel like I uh, lost my groove a little bit. But um, I think Will and Robbie and Nikki are still going to be down for that. So eventually, we're going to end up doing our fashion police thing. Only I think what we're going to do, since the award season ended while I was down, I think what we're going to do is do like a comparison of now, like fashion now versus fashion in like the 80s and how it's changed over the years. I think we might do something of that nature. But anyway, hashtag Chris Watts. Yeah, exactly. Um, yes, Amanda, exactly right. And we don't need food poisoning or a bellyache. I get enough of that anyway. I enjoyed talking about it, you see, boss. I thought about it really hard because I've been really nervous about people having any information about me at all. But since I don't live there anymore, um, and it's to me, I think it's such an interesting and fascinating story, because especially since some of these people I can vouch for. Now, my personal opinion about the Mothman thing. Oh, Doodle, no. Plug it in, girl. Get your charger out. Um, my personal opinion is that, oh, man. We'll talk, Dee Dee, sometime. Maybe we can do something to help. If there's any way I can help, let me know. But I think the best thing that she can do is kind of ignore it. If they're just accusing her of being you, I mean, there's worse things that she can be accused of. Of course, I'm not watching what they're saying, but that's just my opinion. Um, anyway, I thought it was, yes, and ghosting them is the best way to deal with people like them, because all they care about is attention, and they don't care whether it's negative or positive attention. And if they got negative shit to say, they can just suck a dick. I mean, let me just look at something real quick. I want to see who's been blocked. I don't think anybody had to be blocked tonight, but crap, I can't open it. Okay. Anyway, I don't have very many people blocked at all. And in the beginning, when I first started going live, I asked my mods not to block anybody until they started being dicks. There's only a handful of people that I have had to be blocked on here. And mostly, we haven't mentioned anybody except for So Loony. Um, and if you've noticed, like, that whole crowd has pretty much left us alone. And I think that's proof of the theory that, kind of like Beetlejuice, if you don't say their name, they don't show up, or Drop Dead Fred, or any of those people. If, as my mom used to say, when a bee got in the house, don't bother it and it won't bother you. And that's how I kind of feel like is the best way to deal with them. Um, Candyman. Yeah, Candyman. Exactly. Exactly. I was trying to think of somebody worse than Beetlejuice. I couldn't think straight. Um, so we've talked about the Mothman and my freaky Ouija board experiences. Does anybody have anything else they want to talk about tonight? I'm starting to get tired. That's all they ever do, Dee Dee, for real. I mean, you know, we don't know how to make real content, so we're just going to say a lot of stuff to piss people off. So they talk about us. I mean, that's what they do. I've yet to ever like I've gone and listened to their stuff once or twice, and I always get so horribly bored within the first few minutes that I always end up turning it off. I mean, I'll be honest. Oh, I appreciate you too, Lufa. Yes, you see, boss. I'm going to drop my email in here, and I welcome any suggestions anybody has for topics. Like, give me good topics because I need help to think of stuff to do lives on. But anything you want me to do as a topic or you want to suggest, I'm open to anything. If you're in my Discord, I have a channel for suggestions, and you can also email me at answerthequestionclaire@hotmail.com. And so anything y'all want to do, like I'm always down for. Um, I always say I want my channel to be more about the people watching and listening than about me, and I really mean that. So I want to get more participation in my chats and panels. You know, I love having people come up and talk. And I love it when we get going like we did in some of my past lives that we had. I sound like I'm talking about reincarnation. In some of my past live streams where we all got talking and just ended up talking and talking and talking. I love that, and I want more of that. So, um, the more that we get going, the happier I am. Um, I'll play a little. Let's see. I'll play a little Poe for you. We'll go out on that because I'm running out of stuff to talk about and getting tired. So I appreciate you all coming out, and I appreciate my mods. I'll say it over and over and over again. It makes me so happy that they're all such good sports and went along with my whole Breakfast Club idea. So I absolutely love you guys. And here's a little Poe to come off with. This is my favorite one from the album Haunted. It's called Hey Pretty. And here it is. Oh, sorry. I don't mean to interrupt this, but I did want to mention that those of you who came in late, there is a first part of this stream because I had to reboot my computer in the middle of it. Some of it is repetitive, but you might want to go back if you came in late and watch the first part. And I will drop that link for you so you'll have it. Now, I just wanted to mention that when I saw Amanda say she needed to go back and start from the beginning. So this link here is from the first part of my live. It's about an hour long. Okay, now I'm going to play Poe for you. Sorry about that, guys. And here we go. Oh, that's not it. Wait a minute. Sorry. I don't like that version. This is better. Okay.
Carrie suggested we go for a drive in her new two-door BMW coupe. In the parking lot, we slipped into her bucket seats. Carrie took over from there. At nearly 90 miles per hour, she zipped us up to that windy edge known to some as Mulholland, a sinuous road running the ridge of the Santa Monica Mountains, where she then proceeded to pump her vehicle in and out of turns, sometimes dropping down to 50 miles per hour, only to immediately cut it back up to 90 again. Fast, slow, fast, fast, slow. Sometimes a wide turn, sometimes a quick one. She preferred the tighter ones, the sharp, controlled jerk, swinging left to right before driving back to the right, only so she could do it all over again, until after enough speed and enough wind and more distance than I'd been prepared to expect, taking me to parts of the city I rarely think of and never visit, I heard her say, "Hey, pretty, don't you wanna take a ride with me? Hey, pretty, don't you wanna take a ride? I can't remember the inane things I started babbling about then. I know it didn't really matter.
Sorry, that's not the right one either. Hang on. I'm going to try one more time, and then if I don't get it right, I'm giving up. You can smack me if you want for it. I'm so sorry. I didn't know there were so many versions of this song.
If you write anything on your computer, you need to get grammar.
Okay, this is the right version. Sorry.
I make a wrong turn, breaking out too far gone. I got a siren on my tail, that ain't the one I'm looking for. I hear you steal me, so I follow it down into the valley of a way around my city, cause that's the all around. You know me now, but you know better than that. You got to follow me, boy, I'm trying to show you where I'm at. Hey, pretty, don't you wanna take a ride with me? Hey, pretty, don't you wanna get on that ride? I got a mind full of wicked designs. I got a non-stop pulling my hair, imagination. I'm in a building that has 2,000 floors, and when they are falling, I think you know it's beautiful. I can't forget I am a soul architect. I built the shadows here, I built the ground, the voice I fear. You added up, but you do better than that. You got to follow me. Boy, I'm trying to show you where I'm at. Hey, pretty, don't you wanna take a ride with me? To my world. Hey, pretty, don't you wanna get inside? To my world. Hey, pretty, my pretty baby, rock into my world. Hey, pretty, my pretty baby, rock into my world. Hey now, get you feel belonging? You get just for some pain now. Can't you feel me?